Let's look at some other examples of stratovolcanoes from throughout the world. Perhaps the most famous example of a stratovolcano in the world is Mount Fuji. And Mount Fuji is a stratovolcano that occurs in Japan, associated with the subduction zone there. And it's just a beautiful natural setting with the volcano in that area. It's probably the most photographed and painted volcano in the world, and really seems to blend in with the beautiful natural landscape in that area as well. However, it's important to consider Mount Fuji is actually very close to Tokyo, Japan, and offers a hazard, a natural hazard to the people living in this area. It hasn't erupted since Tokyo has gotten so large, but it could happen sometime in the future. Kind of looking back at one of these times when a volcano did erupt with people living around it, one example would be Mount Vesuvius in Italy. So Mount Vesuvius and the nearby city of Pompeii are just to the south of Naples, Italy, right in this area here. And Mount Vesuvius last erupted in 79 AD. So there were people living in the area. There were boats out on the Mediterranean Sea nearby that witnessed it. As Mount Vesuvius erupted in 79 AD, volcanic ash came down the side of Vesuvius and completely engulfed the city of Pompeii. In the other direction, towards the west here, volcanic lava flows at the same time came out of Mount Vesuvius and buried the town of Herculaneum. However, the volcanic ash and pyroclastic debris was a little easier to clear away, and even though Pompeii was buried in volcanic ash, it was uncovered when archaeologists started to do their thing here back in 1748. And what they found was a well-preserved Roman city from that time period. And here's a picture of Pompeii with the current-day Mount Vesuvius in the background. And Pompeii is just an interesting site because it is such a well-preserved Roman city, including what was happening right at the time of eruption. Here's some of the roads through Pompeii. We can see what those look like. And also there were people that were buried in the volcanic ash. Over time, their bodies decayed. And then as they were unearthing Pompeii, when they would find these bodies that were no longer there, they would pour cement into these casts and actually have casts of the people who perished during the eruption of Mount Vesuvius. Another famous volcanic eruption occurred in Indonesia back in 1883, and that was the Krakatoa eruption. Krakatoa, before it erupted, it looked like this. After it erupted, it collapsed down into it just collapsed on itself into something we call a caldera. The eruption could be heard 2,000 miles away in Australia. Krakatoa just flew through a great amount of pyroclastic debris up into the air and into the upper atmosphere even. The eruption itself was so strong it caused tsunamis, giant waves in the ocean, and the ash thrown up by Krakatoa stayed in the atmosphere for years afterwards and caused spectacular sunsets, just fiery looking sunsets associated with all of this volcanic ash in the atmosphere. And actually one person inspired by this was Edward Munch, who painted this famous painting called The Scream. He was not in Indonesia, he was in Norway when he painted this, but he was seeing these spectacular effects from the eruption of Krakatoa. And Krakatoa is not unique in Indonesia. Indonesia is associated with a subduction zone once again, so the entire island arc here is a volcanic island arc. We can see that Jakarta is right here. Here's Krakatoa here, but Indonesia has more active volcanoes than any other country in the world. There's currently more than 100 volcanoes that are active, have been recently active in this area here. So once again, it's an area where we have a lot of volcanoes and a lot of people, which means that there is potential for natural disasters in this area.